Thank you everyone for joining. No matter what coast or middle of the country you're on, it's 3 p.m. here on the East Coast, where I believe most of our presenters are today. So my name is Ryan Brown. I'm with 360 Subscription Billing, and with SquareWorks today, our MC will be
David Singleton. Hello there. How are you? Well, thank you so much for joining. We're really looking forward to this today.
All right, our agenda, we've kind of got through the brief introductions. We're going to talk to topic today is NetSuite, accounts receivable and accounts payable automation suite apps. What's the value prop of these things? Then you're going to see some demos of two of these, as you could see with the Automate demo from SquareWorks Consulting with Michael from SquareWorks will be presenting that, and then you'll see a demonstration of 360 Subscription Billing, which is the accounts receivable side from 360. We'll follow that with some Q&A. We'll also have some poll questions, starting with the first poll question popping in for you. We should get a few of these along the way. And without further ado, David, I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you very much. Well, hello, everyone. I'm David Singleton. I'm the Senior Partner Manager, and we are partnered with the wonderful people at 360 Cloud. I'm so happy to be here today. The Automate portion of this demo is the AP side, which is basically financial automation inside of NetSuite. The idea being that you can have AP automation inside of NetSuite that you wouldn't have with NetSuite normally, but allows you to have additional functionality right in your NetSuite environment so you do not have to go onto another platform. That's what's advantageous. So what we're going to be showing is the following thing. One is an executive dashboard specifically around AP that makes people's lives in accounts payable much easier to get to where they need to get to in NetSuite. It comes with an AI-enabled OCR for invoice scanning. And what that is basically giving a split-screen view to your vendor bill form inside of NetSuite so that we can help populate that to minimize manual entry, but also save that invoice to the record. It can also come with real-time three-way match if you're using purchase orders as well, right? Our three-way match gives you great flexibility in regards to just global variances and thresholds, but even your ability to override those based on a subsidiary, based on a vendor, based on a line item, and can help support you with multiple invoices against a single purchase order. And that can also come with approval. The one thing that people love about our approval engine is that many times they might have somebody that they want as part of their approval process that does not have a NetSuite license, and we can help support that. Okay? That's really advantageous, but it can handle very complex approval workflows as well. It can be based on subsidiaries, vendors, departments, roles, hierarchy, budget amounts, even down to the line item, expense line, or even a custom field on your NetSuite record type. And works on many records in NetSuite that there isn't an available solution from NetSuite to have an approval process for, such as intercompany journal entries, credit memos for clients and customers, as well as inventory adjustments. Then there's also advanced vendor onboarding. One of the things we see is a lot is that, wouldn't it be better if the vendors were self-sufficient on filling out their vendor record in NetSuite? So the AP team doesn't have to, right? That's what's nice. But also too, if they want to change their banking information, let them do it and have an audit trail for that as well, right? And also have approvals for that. And then lastly, we have check printing, only because so many companies moving to NetSuite from, say, Great Plains or some other solution, they may be used to printing checks, if they still have to, on blank check stock. Much more secure, much less costly, but also want digital signatures as the world is moved remotely. So that's what we'll be showing today. These are some of the customers we have. Basically, because we are doing financial automation, we are in all different types of verticals all over the board, as you can see, right? From professional sports teams to soap to nonprofit, right? Et cetera, et cetera. So that's that. And then the next slide, this is just a nice comment from one of our clients. What they felt was so wonderful about using the suite that we're going to be showing you today. And that's all I have. So thank you very much, Ryan.
Good stuff, David. The beauty of getting everything on POs. Yeah, I agree with Ricky. So on the 360 subscription billing, AR automation side of things in NetSuite, really it's not just kind of an any vertical type of thing. You probably got some kind of recurring revenue business model more often than not, or as we call these days subscription. Everybody's trying to make, even manufacturers are trying to transition everything into a subscription basis, which is Certainly what we're seeing a lot of as well. But you're trying to get your back office costs to scale, despite what could be an exponentially high invoicing volume, right? So what you would normally do in NetSuite with manually processing invoice by invoice, you really need some automation to scale with a back office team that's probably going to stay really similar size, despite an exponentially larger volume of invoicing to be done with your customers. Also, once you get to that point, a lot of times you see delays in accounts receivable, cash flow, not having the revenue recognition numbers very quickly or very confidently at month end. Systematizing stuff like this, gives you benefits like that. You also want reporting on recurring revenue, which is a whole new metric that's, not out of the box, in NetSuite's financial package. It's more of a business model specific thing. So monthly, annual recurring revenue, net full, impacts to your recurring revenue. It's nice to know that stuff, as well as, automate things like renewals, for recurring revenue continuity. These are the types of things that an application like 360 subscription billing will give you right inside of NetSuite, where you're already doing all of your order to cash and revenue transactions. For this particular application, it is managed directly from native sales to cash transactions. So if you're using NetSuite CRM, opportunities estimates, and of course, order to cash, sales orders, invoices, or whatnot, it's involved in those transactions you would be using anyways. It does provide a true consolidated invoice from contracts, including the ability to do line level addresses and taxes, which, given some of the recent SaaS software legislation, we're seeing a lot of interest for consolidated invoicing to do line level or site specific tax. If you have software at different locations and the taxing might be different. This particular application is the only option to keep very high customer invoicing entirely in the NetSuite platform due to the way it's been architected. It's been around for over 10 years. We're proud to say, and it also has pre-built apps and a connector to Salesforce. So many of our clients are leveraging Salesforce for their CRM and CPQ, or in other words, their opportunity to order side before they want NetSuite to go order to cash and revenue and take it from there. And we happen to have for this app a lot of clients that have bundled hardware, right? You've already got NetSuite, you've got the ERP, so you may have manufacturing, procurement, you may be selling inventory or have a device or an asset part of your subscription bundle. So you may want to track that or have, these inventory, hardware, device, serial tracking, if you will, components for subscriptions. 360 subscription billing has that stuff as well. So here's how all that overlays. Today, we're going to talk about the highlighted point here in the green box, the NetSuite side. We do have on 360subscriptionbilling.com a lot of product tour videos and whatnot about the Salesforce and Salesforce CPQ functionality. So primarily within this green box, the subscription billing and the payment processing is what you're leveraging. But as a reminder, as with David's slide, your financial management, your shipping, your procurement, all the rest of that is still in NetSuite, right, with the rest of this stuff. And ideally also automate for your AP side. We have connectors and plugins built specifically with VersaPay for those of you that have been checking out VersaPay to actually be your payment processor while you're using NetSuite as your master. And we are doing a lot of work these days with the NetSuite Electronic Bank Payments module, which is free for all of you NetSuite users. Check it out in Suite app if you haven't done so already. It makes bank-to-bank payment processing free through NetSuite. Really awesome. Here are a lot of the features. I've already talked about a lot of them, but if you stare at it a bit, the bottom line is, our Suite app, given it's been around for 10 years, it's not its own separate thing that you do on the side of the normal NetSuite sales to cash process. It actually rides along as part of the NetSuite sales to cash transactions. So that's kind of the big different thing and what we're really excited about with 360 subscription billing. NetSuite has been that way for 2 decades. We've been working with NetSuite for over 2 decades now, and we feel like our application is a very, very native fit within NetSuite because of all those things. And without further ado, I think we're almost at that point in time. We're going to get into our demonstrations. So I will pass it off to the brilliant Mr. Michael from the SquareWorks team, who's going to run through the SquareWorks Automate demo.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll just jump right into the demo here. David kind of give you an overview of what our AP automation platform is able to offer you. Obviously have a limited amount of time here on the demo, so unfortunately I can't go through all of the features that we have. We'd be happy to follow up with you and discuss any other features that we're not able to cover. But before I get too far into it, actually, I think we had another poll question. Can that go ahead and be launched while I'm kind of getting into the demo here? Sorry, I appreciate that. But what I'm going to be talking about in our demo here today is that we're going to be looking at our AP automation dashboard. We're going to be talking about our AI-enabled OCR, how that can be used to scan invoices that you get from vendors into NetSuite to create that bill record for you. We're going to talk about a three-way match if you're a company that's using purchase orders, tracking expenses on purchase orders, like our great client Abcuro that you saw the testimonial from. Ricky wants to track expenditure on purchase orders, how you can use our real-time three-way match engine to keep up with those things. And then we're going to spend some time talking about approvals. So the first thing I want to go ahead and talk about here is our AP automation dashboard. As it's kind of been talked about already through the 360 billing subscription as well as our AP automation platform, all of this sits natively inside of NetSuite. There's no integrations, there's no hooks and connectors that you have to worry about breaking down. All of our functionality is just going to be sitting inside of NetSuite, enhancing the core NetSuite product and platform. Our AP automation dashboard is dynamic. There's multiple views to it. Again, depending upon the functionality that you're using within our solution, if you're using our vendor onboarding solution or some of our purchase order functionality, you have different views of the dashboard that you can look at to kind of keep up with where your different records are in the process, right? So here's some information about my purchase orders. I can also switch over and look at where vendors are in the onboarding process if we're using our vendor onboarding solution. Dashboard always has links on the side too to tie you again into some native NetSuite functionality, like, hey, I just want to see a list of all my vendors, as well as again, like requesting a vendor through our solution or some of the queues that we have available within our solution. So you can see where our solution again just sits right inside of NetSuite, ties back to the native NetSuite functionality wherever it can, and just adds that enhancement where it needs to. We're going to focus mostly around payables, so I'm going to switch back over to the payables dashboard here and talk about this a little bit more. All of the boxes you see on our dashboard are also clickable, right? So these blue boxes here, if I need more information about bills that I have out for approval, I can actually click on that box and be taken to an underlying search of all of those 91 bills in my demo environment that I currently have out for approval. I know a lot of AP teams really love this, right? When we talk about approval, I know a lot of times you potentially need to book accruals at the end of potentially a period around what's outstanding. And right from the dashboard, you can get an easy view into what's outstanding, what amounts are they, even who's it waiting on to kind of help you book those accruals if necessary. So that's a little high overview of the dashboard. Next thing I'm going to go ahead and talk about is how you process bills. So with our AP automation solutions, you have invoices scanned by our AI-enabled OCR. They can come into NetSuite in two forms. One way that you can get bills into NetSuite is through email, right? This is very common today in the AP world. You're receiving an email from your vendor that already has that invoice attached. You can just have that forwarded into NetSuite. It's going to be uploaded and waiting for you in what we call our invoice queue or this bills to review queue. The other option that you have is to just drag and drop invoices into NetSuite as well. So it's very versatile. You don't have to pick one or two of those methods. You have both available to you, kind of whatever is more convenient in the given day with the invoices that you currently have. So just for my demonstration today, I'm going to show you the drag and drop interface. But again, remember, a lot of our clients are having most of their invoices coming in by email, and that's very common. So right from the AP automation dashboard here, I have this link on my sidebar here where I can go ahead and upload multiple invoices. So I went ahead and just created 2 invoices for our demo call here today to talk about. First thing I just wanted to go ahead and demonstrate is if you are using the drag and drop interface, it does support uploading multiple invoices at the same time. There are some solutions out there that make you do it individually, right? We don't have time for that, right? We want to be able to drag and drop multiple files at the same time if we can, and that's supported with our solution. And I can go ahead and click upload to start the process of uploading and scanning those particular files. A couple things, I'm uploading 2 invoices so that we can talk about 2 different use cases. One would be if you are leveraging purchase orders within NetSuite, And then another would be bills where maybe you don't have purchase orders, or if you're a company that doesn't use purchase orders at all, right? Maybe you have overhead bills that you don't put on purchase orders. It's very common to need to process those with our solution as well. One thing to know about our OCR, just so you're aware, is it does only support scanning of PDF invoices. So if you're a company out there that does receive other types of invoices, you just need to make sure that they come in a PDF form. A lot of times you can just have a conversation with your vendor, say, hey, we have a new payment processing. Industry standard is to use PDF. We need you to go ahead and start sending us a PDF. Most of our clients have no problem managing that vendor relationship and starting and getting PDF. As soon as it finished scanning those invoices that I uploaded, it took me directly to that invoice queue, right? So this is the same place I would get. If I go back just to show you my dashboard here, if I go back to my dashboard tab, this bills to review queue is my invoice queue. It's a list of all of the invoices that have come into NetSuite, have been scanned by our OCR, and are just waiting to be processed, turned into a vendor bill within NetSuite. Again, whether they come in via email or drag and drop, it's a single queue to manage. The queue is going to give you some high-level information about what's been extracted off the invoice, right? So I can see the vendor name, what subsidiary we assigned, if you're in a one-world environment that has multiple subsidiaries, invoice number, whether there was a PO, invoice date, and amount. So if I'm an AP clerk looking through this queue, and I'm expecting an invoice from a particular vendor, or I just happen to look down the list and see, hey, there's an older invoice date in here. How did we miss this? I might want to go ahead and process that one first. We're also going to try to detect if there's a duplicate, right? So if a vendor sends you an invoice multiple times, or someone within your company forwards something into NetSuite and you have it as a duplicate, we can go ahead and notify you of that right here, something that you might not need to process. If something is a duplicate or something comes in that is not something you need to process, you can easily remove it from the queue with this button on the right side of the screen. If you actually want to process one of these invoices and turn it into a vendor bill within NetSuite, you're going to use that create bill link on the left side of the screen. So again, I have two different types of bills that I kind of loaded up here, invoices that I scanned. One would be an example of one that's with a purchase order, and the other would be an example of one that's without a purchase order. So let's start and look at the one that's associated with a purchase order first, and then we'll come and talk about potentially a standalone bill. So when I click this create bill button, what it's going to do is it's going to open me up into a new tab. Even though it's opening up into a new tab, remember our solutions are all sitting inside of NetSuite. So this isn't taking me out of NetSuite. It's just giving me easy access back to that invoice queue. If I wanted to go grab another bill to process or something like that, it doesn't leave that particular tab. And it's going to display a split screen view to me. So on the left side of the screen, I'm actually going to be able to see the invoice that our AI-enabled OCR scanned. And on the left side of the screen, I'm going to see my native vendor bill form. So in your instance of NetSuite, however your bill form has been set up, that's what you're going to see here on the right side of the screen. Any of the custom fields that you've set up, all of that great configuration is already going to be right there for you to use. Our OCR is going to try to extract the relevant pieces of information off the invoice and go ahead and populate them for you so that you don't have to manually do it, right? So pieces of information like the invoice number have been extracted for me. It detected that there was a purchase order number on this particular invoice, so it associated it with that purchase order for me, selected the vendor for me, went ahead and populated the date for me. At the line level, it picked up the lines that were on this particular invoice. It matched them to those lines that were on my purchase order. I didn't show you that purchase order ahead of time, but I had 2 lines on my purchase order. And then it filled in the quantity, rate, and amount that it found on this particular invoice with the corresponding lines on my bill form. The reason that quantity, rate, and amount are very important when you're dealing with purchase orders and an OCR standpoint is those are the key drivers that drive a three-way match, right? When you're entering item receipts and bills into NetSuite, you want to make sure that your vendors aren't billing you for a higher quantity or at a higher rate than you expected to receive on your purchase order. And that's what we create those three-way match tolerances around. So we can see how this matched up correctly by the OCR data, but I'm just going to quickly demonstrate like what would happen if my vendor overbills me. So I know because I set up this purchase order that I actually ordered 30 toner cartridges and 15 printers. So this is actually an example of a partial bill that we see here. But let's say, for instance, that my vendor tries to bill me for 40 toner cartridges. When I go to click save, you're going to see we have our real-time three-way match validation that's going to run, and it's going to notify me of any issues that it finds, right? So in this particular case, I have my threshold set up very strictly. There can be no overages allowed in my particular environment. So right here, it's letting me know, hey, this is over your PO threshold, as well as more than you've actually received at this particular point. If I hover over this little eye icon, I can see a little bit more information. Your PO quantity was only 30. However, you're trying to be billed for 40. Same thing with what I've received at this point. You've received 30, but you're being billed for 40. With our three-way match solution, we can set up those tolerances for you at a line level for quantity, rate, and amount, and it can take into consideration some sort of threshold, right? So you don't have to have them match exactly. I actually worked in procurement for a while, and there were certain industries or certain things that we ordered from our vendors that they were made specifically for us. So we couldn't tell them, even though we might have ordered 1,000 cardboard boxes, right? The paper mill that was making those cardboard boxes for me couldn't guarantee that they were going to shut the machine down exactly at the 1,000 that they ordered. So there was within our contract a 10% variance that we could actually receive. So you could actually build into our three-way match solution a rule that said, as long as it doesn't exceed 10% of the PO quantity, let it go through. However, if it's over 10% of the quantity, go ahead and notify me that additional action needs to be taken. So the real benefit of this real-time three-way match is, number one, it's not a report that you get at the end of the day. This is happening as you enter your bills into NetSuite. And it takes the burden off of your AP team to know, hey, what is allowed to go through and what is not allowed to go through, right? Let the system build those rules into the system, so the system goes ahead and notifies you when there's something that needs additional review. If I go back here and I just correct this variance, go ahead and click save, we'll see again, three-way match validation is going to run, but as long as there's no issues, it's going to let me go ahead and proceed, and it's going to create that native NetSuite bill record for me. So again, the benefit to this split screen view is for your AP team, the people that are entering bills into NetSuite. This is hopefully just a quick review. All you're really doing is validating that the information on the invoice is what's going into NetSuite, right? You're not going back to the purchase order to validate what's left on the purchase order and all that kind of thing. Let the solution do that for you. So at this point, I have a bill record created in my instance of NetSuite. If you're using approvals with our solution, at this point, it would go into a not submitted status, and it can be submitted for approval. I'm going to quickly jump over, and we're going to talk about an invoice that's not linked with a purchase order, and then we'll go ahead and submit one of those bills for approval and talk about our approval solution. So let me quickly jump back to my invoice queue here. We can see that top bill that I had uploaded is now out of my invoice queue. I have this other invoice that I uploaded. So let's go ahead and process that one. I can easily see from the queue, this one was not associated with a purchase order. As far as creating the bill, the process is going to be the same, right? I'm going to click that create bill link like I did before. It's going to open up a split screen view like it did before with the purchase order bill. The only real thing that we're going to see that's different this invoice versus last invoice is there's no purchase order selected here in this purchase order dropdown. I can validate on the invoice, hey, the vendor didn't put a purchase order number on it, so that's what I expect. If the vendor just forgot to put the purchase order number on it, I know that happens sometimes, and in the wonderful world of procurement, I ran into that as well. We do give you the ability to select from any open purchase order you have with this vendor. So if it was just a mistake and you still need to make that association, you can manually do that if you need to. However, if this is supposed to be a standalone invoice, it's not supposed to be associated with a purchase order, or you're an organization that doesn't use purchase orders, you can still process this kind of bill. We're going to see the same kind of information like invoice number, vendor, date, amount is populated for me. But if I scroll down to the line level information here, it's going to look a little bit different than when I had a purchase order, right? So when you have a purchase order, you know what you're expecting to receive from your particular vendor. When you don't have a purchase order, our solution has to look elsewhere to help you determine what items or expenses did you actually expect to be billed for from this vendor. So what our solution is going to do is it's going to bring in the lines that it sees on the invoice here, description and amount, into NetSuite. And then it's going to try to help you code the bill, right? So it's going to use, going to try to help you select the account, the department, the class, the location. If your instance of NetSuite is using any custom coding details, we can also help populate those custom coding details. And what it's actually doing is it's looking at previous invoices that you've scanned for this particular vendor, in this particular subsidiary, if it can find lines on those previous invoices that have already been entered into NetSuite, it's going to copy forward those coding details for you. So essentially, it's kind of automating the process of, if I'm an AP clerk, maybe I only get one bill from Delta Consultants a month, or maybe two bills from Delta Consultants a month, but I'm processing 1,000 invoices or more per month. I don't remember how I code these every single time. I don't want to keep that in my memory. Our solution is going to see how you coded the previous invoices for expenses similar to this, and it's going to go ahead and copy those coding details for you. We don't lock down this form though. So if you, as the AP person, decide that you need to change any of these coding details, you're free to go ahead and do that. Like, let's say I want to update this and these now need to be department 123, right? This is your form in NetSuite. You're free to update those. And when you save this bill, our AP automation solution and our AI is also going to learn that, right? So it's going to realize that the coding details have now changed. Going forward, this is how you need to code those bills. Again, as soon as I clicked save, there's no three-way match in this case, right? Because there's no purchase order linked. It went ahead and immediately created that bill record for me. We've also attached a copy of the invoice here to the record in NetSuite. If I ever want to get that split screen view back, I can easily do that, see the invoice that was scanned by the OCR. Once I have that bill record in NetSuite, if I want it to go ahead through an approval process, I can go ahead and submit this bill for approval. David kind of talked about our approval solution, very flexible to handle a lot of different use cases. We can route to individual employees, we can route through hierarchies, we can route through matrices based on approval details that are on the record in NetSuite. So there's a lot of different ways that we can set up those approval processes for you. One of the big differentiators of our solution, just going to quickly highlight because I'm running out of time here, is we're going to store all of the approval history on the record in NetSuite. If you have access to NetSuite, you can easily approve from within NetSuite. But if you have approvers that don't have access to NetSuite, they can actually receive an email and do all of the approvals that they need to right from an email. Let me quickly jump over and show you what that looks like. So here's an example of the approval email that I just received, letting me know that I have a bill that's waiting for my approval. It can give me information right from NetSuite of different coding details that were entered on that bill. It can give me an attachment of the actual invoice that was scanned. So I can actually see, hey, this is what the vendor sent us. This is the invoice that was scanned and entered into NetSuite. If I want to approve this bill, all I need to do is click one of these corresponding buttons, either approve or reject. It's going to open up a response that needs to go back to NetSuite. I can still enter a comment if I'd like to, hit send. This goes back into NetSuite, is processed by our solution, and the appropriate action, either approving or rejecting, is taken. So all of that can be done without needing a license to NetSuite. So if you have approvers that need to be involved in the approval process, but that's all they need to do, they're not in NetSuite for their day-to-day jobs, this is a great way to allow them to approve and reject invoices, like David said, purchase orders, other things like that. But it can really cut down on the amount of licenses that you need in NetSuite. Again, if I have access to NetSuite, I can hit approve. Let's just say this looks good. And then that comment can be captured in NetSuite on the record itself.
And while that's spinning, this is a great way for many companies to actually have an audit trail for their approvals, which is very necessary in certain organizations.
Absolutely, yeah. So we're going to store all that record or all that information on the record in NetSuite. So it's always there for audit purposes going forward. And again, those comments are great that we're storing those comments on the record as well. So if we look at the approval history here, we can see that I approved that. It moved on to a second step in my approval process. We can obviously support multiple steps approval processes. This moved on to another approver. These approvers would have received emails. For the sake of time, just going to show you that you do have the ability within our solution to specify super approvers. So I switched over to a different role here. Let's say the Chris and Robert were unavailable to approve this bill for whatever reason. A super approver could come in and approve on their behalf. So I'm just going to quickly do that just because I'm running out of time on the demo here. I am required to enter a comment when I do that. to approve on this person's behalf. Again, to David's point, we want to make sure that we maintain an audit trail of what's happening, why people are using that super approved permission. Very important in a lot of companies. This is the last step in my approval process. So once this particular step is approved, we can see that the bill switches to an approved open status. Now I have a bill in NetSuite that I can go ahead and pay through however you'd like to pay that, right? You can use the electronic payment solution in NetSuite. David touched on, we do have an advanced check printing solution. If you need to print checks on blank check stock, we can help you with that. But there's lots of great ways that you can go ahead and pay this at this point. It's also now posted to your GL, right? So our solution follows the native NetSuite best practice, which is why bills are pending approval. They haven't actually posted to the GL. Once they are fully approved, at that point is when they're posting and show up in all of your NetSuite financial reports. All right, I think I finished with 1 minute to spare, Ryan. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to you for your portion of the demo.
Well, I think we had a quick question we can squeeze in for you, Michael, that came in.
Okay.
You see that one?
Yeah, let me look at this. Is there a limit on the number of invoices that can be uploaded at once? No, there is not a system limitation with the drag and drop interface. You can upload as many as you want. There is a limitation if you're emailing in invoices that only 20 can be attached to a single email that comes in. That's the only limit on the amount that can come in is through email.
Sweet. Thank you, Michael. The timer going there right on time. Okay, jumping back in, the accounts receivable customer invoicing side of things with 360 subscription billing. And it occurred to me that, for AP, as the SquareWorks team is saying, AP is kind of applicable to almost all verticals and industries. But depending on, how you would categorize your company's vertical or industry, these are, some of the common accounts receivable, recurring billing, recurring revenues verticals that we work with 360 subscription billing. Of course, SaaS, of course, managed services being the big ones. Getting into some property management, as well as the new wave of subscription inventory, which is these are highlighted. These are kind of areas where we've got some special stuff that we excel in, and also Internet of Things. So a device bundled with a subscription, which can add some complexities. So there's a little QR code. If anybody wants to snap it with their phone, you'll see a little video that we made with NetSuite a while back about an IoT style company, that does it all in NetSuite, and then uses 360 subscription billing. The demo I'm going to show you is, it's not exactly any of these. So you'd be a little bit creative. And if you have any questions, we're happy to take those at the end. And of course, we can follow up later. So without further ado, I will jump into NetSuite. Much like you saw with Michael's, this is NetSuite that we're assuming most, if not all of you already have and are used to. And this is a standard user dashboard. All I've done is pull into the dashboard things from our Suite app, as you could see in the menu here in this particular environment. Just like in Michael's demo with Automate, I've got 360 subscription billing, and I've got, we've got some out-of-the-box KPI saved searches, some reminders like you see up here, some other save searches around, billing and contracts and maybe unbilled and, invoice charges, payments as well. Some administrative tool support and whatnot. But commonly, when you install 360 subscription billing, you start with these and add some of your own. So, how many orders are pending fulfillment, if that triggers my billing or my revenue, unpaid invoices, right? Give you a lot of turbo boost or get started quick things, as we call them, Suite Success style. In the way of NetSuite Suite Success for these types of things. This helps you stay on top of the day-to-day whirlwind of things. And then, of course, if you're going to be doing all of this transaction in NetSuite with 360 subscription billing, probably your management team, your board, some folks on the revenue operations side, they really want to know what's going on with our recurring revenues. So you'll also get from this trending analysis. These are particularly using NetSuite Workbook Analytics, but we'll take snapshots of recurring revenue in monthly, annual, quarterly formats, and then you can trend them in a full fashion. We even capture net recurring revenue changes, which is what this graph here shows, trailing 12 months, what happened in month 7 where I had a big spike in recurring revenue from add-ons to existing customers who have contracts, where you could see I have in this particular example, much less hunting and net new business coming in for recurring revenue, and then quite a bit from upsells where I'm upgrading, replacing a recurring item of some sort to gain monthly recurring revenue. And then some cases, maybe they're going down tier to a lower product, or there's a price drop or something they've negotiated. These metrics, very important for management teams and boards, we know, in recurring revenue style of businesses. And of course, you would bake all this into your dashboard when you install 360SB, along with any other KPIs, things like bank rec summaries if you're in accounting finance and you're worried about that, and of course your recent records and your standard settings. Also in the menu, we give you a preferences page to configure the application globally. This is a lot like NetSuite. For today's demo, this is completely overwhelming, but you can see, how transaction calculations occur, can be configured. Transaction processing, there's ways to dial things in, thinking about, co-termination or not to co-term when you get into NetSuite. What creates and starts a subscription, sets that start date, recalculates, billing days and end days. And when it comes to default payment methods, if you're going to be using NetSuite to bill, you'd love to go on ahead and have NetSuite pull electronically a payment and auto apply it to that invoice for you. And if it fails, you'd like to know that too. So you could set a default there. You can have many other settings. We have a lot of functionality which is quite unique to our application, where we turn the item fulfillment, which is normally used for shipment of inventory and hardware, into an activation engine that lets you start subscriptions maybe upon a shipment date or upon a go live date. And you could use the same native NetSuite item fulfillment transaction off of a sales order, let's say, to start and create subscriptions or contract lines variably. We even allow you to partially fulfill. So let's say you sold, 100 subscriptions, and they all kind of start at different days because you're waiting on external events in the field to start them, and that may turn into a bunch of subscriptions with their own unique start dates and end dates. That's fine. You can partially fulfill those from the original order, and you could have essentially many different subscriptions, or what we call contract lines, from that. We even allow you to dial in the dates in custom ways, even at the line level on those item fulfillments. Bunch of other stuff I'll skip for today. I'll say we do have a quite the differentiating crediting, meaning the inverse of an invoice. The credit memo functionality will automatically calculate a credit due back. Let's say you upsell to a gold level from a silver midway through a billing period, right? We'll credit them back for that last half of the period of the silver automatically. We'll also create that credit memo and automatically apply it during recurring invoicing, so that net balance due for automatic payment processing is correct, and you don't have to wait and have people manually creating and applying credit memos. Our in-contract actions functionality is kind of baked into our system, but we're going to code things as upsell, downsell, new, add-on, cross-sell, renew quite explicitly, so that you can see again where your net recurring revenue changes are coming from. And we've got quite a few things around that. And then of course, end of term action, more than just billing and payment processing. We want to help continuity of customer recurring revenue. So whether that's a renewal to a transaction that somebody has to sign, seal, and approve before you extend it, we can automate that in NetSuite. Again, we do work a lot with Salesforce and Salesforce CPQ. If you want that type of thing to occur externally in Salesforce, we have an app and a connector for that. We have auto renewal in NetSuite as well, in case you want to skip the whole human approval side of things and just go right to a new contract term. We also have something called rollover, and a hybrid of rollover until renewal. Rollover turns it into a month-to-month or a year-to-year, an evergreen, if you will, at the end of the subscription. It's kind of a automation thing that skips any manual approvals. We also, for those of you that may have late renewals, we'll roll it over into an evergreen until that renewal comes through, so that you're not losing any recurring revenue in the middle. As far as payment processing, We do allow you to process payments for our automated recurring invoicing, as well as also for any sales order invoices where you may want to relate one of our contracts to. And then, of course, whether you have credit cards or you have bank-to-bank EFT, EBT, we let you control the number of retry attempts, the days between retry attempts, so that, you know, in case something odd happened the first time, you can keep it going without having to bug your back office team with that information. And I definitely won't have enough time to get into it today, but as far as revenue management goes, we've got some quite advanced capabilities around revenue recognition and synchronizing and automating things within revenue management that may be particularly time consuming for your teams. And as I mentioned previously, if you can remember from almost 30 minutes ago, we have what we call sites, devices, and assets. Think of this as tracking your customer's site, maybe your customer's asset that the subscription is related to. And then if you have a device that you're including here, it could be serialized, if you will. Think of serialized inventory tracking for subscriptions that doesn't necessarily have to go through the inventory module, right? It can be whatever you want to call it, and you can track this thing throughout the life of your subscription. Here's a standard NetSuite item. In this case, it's a non-inventory item, but our module works with all types of items. You can see we've added some fields here to set some defaults. So what's your default billing frequency? You can change this on a line-by-line basis from anywhere to weekly all the way up to tri-annually. We got lots of billing frequencies that we can support. You know, a default term in months, what's going to happen at the end, what type of thing is it? And beyond that, if you wanted to do a resale item, we do a lot of that. Speaking of, you know, with our AP friends over here, you know, I'll show a little bit of that in this particular demo today. And then, of course, we're going to work with a lot of the native NetSuite price levels and multi-currency pricing that you may already be used to in NetSuite today from your items. So I've installed the app, I've configured it, I've got items, and I've kind of set some values on my items for which things are going to be recurring. And you want 360 subscription billing to, you know, create contracts, create contract lines, and automate things for you within your native transactional flow. Beyond that, I just need customers. So we let you tag customer contacts as who's going to get what type of communication. We will automatically email invoices after we've created them, and even after we've applied an electronic payment, if you want us to. We will also support, as I mentioned, suite payment. So if you've got a credit card going here through any of the dozens of suite payment providers, we can support electronic bank payments module here. I think I've got one set up here for Wells Fargo that we can process payment against. And of course, you're going to be able to create as many contracts against the customers you want. You could see somebody's tested with this test customer a lot. And a reason you might want different contracts is a different payment method or a different, you know, billing day, or, you know, a weekly basis rather than a monthly basis. In other words, there's no reason they would ever practically co-term and consolidate for invoicing. You know, on the same contract, you can have as many of these as you want. Also, if you want to pay through different vehicles. And of course, you can define, you know, different customer sites. And many of our customers created sub-customers and all of the overhead that comes with creating sub-customers for the simple purpose of tracking an address or tracking a technical contact, you know, to support or something like that. We've got a simple record that rides along with your subscriptions or contract lines, as we call it, that lets you do that quite easily and lightly. Ultimately, the sales order is the hub of the wheel for order to cash, sales to cash transactions in NetSuite, as I like to say. This sales order's already been processed for the sake of expediency. I only have 8 minutes left according to my timer with you today, but this is just a native transaction. You can see we're starting to roll up recurring revenue values, total contract value values here. And my lines, I've just got some standard you know, inventory item here that doesn't have any of our special 360 subscription billing recurring column field data on it. So there's no such thing as a billing frequency, a start date, a first recurring bill date, an end date, right? But then when I've got you know, these essentially support contracts for these pieces of inventory, as in my hypothetical here, I can relate them to the site. I can relate the customer's asset numbers that I'm supporting here to it, right? I can have these terms. I can have the variable prices. I can invoice this from the sales order, which is, this is still all just native NetSuite that all of you would have. And of course, we're going to write the billing period for these charges to all of your invoice lines, so that's clear. under the hood, I just checked a box that said start new contract on that sales order. And this contract has been fully invoiced and renewed for the sake of expediency in this demo today. We're going to create this custom record in our module for you. That's the contract. Think of it as the roll-up of all of the lines or usage records or credits and all of the stuff that's involved in the nature of your contract. I can store things like a purchase order here quite commonly. And natively, we're going to tell you what's the roll-up of all my full recurring revenue values across many different metrics. How much have I billed to date? And just to align a little bit with our friends on the purchasing and expense side today, since we are doing a shared webinar, I showed how easy it is just to add some COGS fields, right? You can relate purchase and expense transactions to contracts too, and come up with like a margin to date or a gross GP to date. I did these with just custom fields and a saved search. And you could see down here, here's that sales order transaction I started with, but I got a purchase order on this too, right? I've got a vendor bill that I'm tracking against, right? So I can include COGS on contracts too. We don't do that out of the box, but it's all within NetSuite, right? Where you could have automate with 360 subscription billing in NetSuite. And you can view our contracts, if you so choose, from both a revenue and an expense side if you wanted to. Ultimately, all of the transactions related to this contract, you can see I go quite far into the future. I'll get to some of those in a second, you'll see here. And then what we call contract lines are just those ones from the orders that come in that are flagged and configured to be that way. They can have any start and end date they want. You can have a mix of frequencies, different terms, all that's fine, but these become their own records that essentially becomes consolidated lines on an invoice from the contract over time. And here is an example of one of those invoices. It looks just like the one other than the inventory, which was kind of a one and done sale from that sales order. And you could see now we've advanced into May of 2023. But my one-time stuff is done. It kind of ended its life, if you will, on that sales order. For the remaining recurring part of the life cycle, I'm going to be working with my contract that you see here. So I can also have, for those of you that are interested in support in NetSuite, we commonly see cases related to contracts. Again, it's all within NetSuite. You're a custom field and a link away from relating cases. You could see this case came in about, one of these servers we're supporting being down, right? And I can relate on this case information from 360 subscription billing, maybe even purchase transactions that you're using and automate depending on your business type, right? So there's my contract there. Ultimately, this site from this contract line, they said it was the Atlanta site that went down. Here's how simple a site record can be. I've added some custom fields on it for the sake of this use case today, but I can see, hey, that's my technician that I need to go cut a purchase order for. And then I'm off into automate, right? So we can connect our two applications. We're all in NetSuite, folks. That's kind of the theme of our demo today. On this contract, they may want to say, well, what are my customer assets that I'm supporting? I can click that link and very quickly see a list of all of these records that represent those assets that I put in on, related orders, fulfillments, transactions that were added to contract lines. And these are records. They're expandable. This asset I can search and find in the global system. So I can track and see that is from this site for this customer. It's this, product line. It's this item. All kinds of other custom stuff that looks like we've included for this demonstration. I can see related transactions where I've supported this customer asset related to my contracts. In this case, I may have sent out a piece of my IP or inventory, if you will. So there's a device. Maybe this thing is an expensive server is what we're pretending today to replace one that failed. And, maybe I still own it. I can relate a fixed asset to that. So we're connecting to more pieces of NetSuite here. I can get into depreciation and fixed asset management. Maybe the life cycle is set and the depreciation start date is from the day that thing goes live with a customer in the field that I'm supporting it, right? So I can, click right through, my device record, if you will. That's a hook into my customer and see, something that's going through a fixed asset depreciation life cycle. Maybe I send the same asset or device, if you will, back out to a customer on a different contract that I have later if it's not fully depreciated, right? All of these are separate things with their own separate life cycles, but our module kind of lets you relate them. Yes, it is primarily for AR order to cash, but because we're in NetSuite, we can link to all the other great process areas within NetSuite. That's kind of the point I'm trying to make with my demonstration mostly today. So I'll go back to the contract and tell you quickly, if you do have changes along the way, you can change them from the contract. You can integrate them in from Salesforce. You can just enter a new sales order. You can also click a button to create a contract change and essentially say, hey, I want to change this line with this new start date or this new item or this new rate. You can see I've started to enter some of this stuff here and I'm running out of time, but ultimately we're going to process these as a sales order for you in case you don't want to enter a whole sales order from scratch every time. And this is kind of what it looks like, right? So now I'm not starting a new contract, I'm changing my contract. I'm changing the price on this line. Here's my my old price. Now I got my new price and I'm adding on another, in this case, server support contract. And I'm not necessarily starting these in the same dates that the other ones did, right? But I do want to co-term them with everything else so that it renews together. So we'll automatically prorate the total contract value for the revenue recognition spread, if you will. And we'll also prorate in case there's a half period. In this case, there is. I've got exactly the last half of June left on these. So I'm not going to bill my full monthly contract rate for these. It's going to prorate and figure out that last half of June to bill for me. It's also going to generate a credit in the module. So this contract line that gets created ultimately for the price change, because I do owe you something back for what I already billed you at the beginning of June, I'm going to create a contract credit for that prorated amount due back. You can see I owe you $385 back. I think I'm going to bill you $400 something. But when I go to invoice and I bill you this $436 for the latter half of June after I upsold your price, my amount due is offset. Why? Because I've got that credit memo that we created and automatically applied. So we're automating not just the billing, but also the crediting side of this because we want to get that payment due amount back, right? And this credit memo now has a link back into our module, right? Back into that contract. And ultimately this invoice, I'm running out of time, getting the hook here, is going to, if you had automatically payment processing against it, it's going to run it for that $283.90 instead of, essentially that net $66.89 before I calculate and apply the credit due back from that price change that I had. Wrapping up here, this contract also will show you all of those credits. It also gives you a hook into revenue management. So I can see all of my contract revenue here, all my related revenue arrangements. We don't have time to get into revenue today. I've certainly have run out of time, but you see in this case, I have it automatically merging everything together, all of these changes, all of these credits into one revenue arrangement. Here's all my original stuff that started in April. Here's my essentially changes and my add-on that was in June. And oh, by the way, here's my little bit of the reversal for what I had to give them back on that credit there. Finally, I'll go to the bottom of the transactions page. All I had to do was the sales order, obviously the shipment if I have to ship anything, but all of these invoices here, they're just, run for you. Think of it like the printing press, right? The payments against them could be like a printing press, the emailing to your customer and customer contacts, the printing press. But then 90 days before this thing is over, we will generate a quote for those of you that are like us and use NetSuite CRM. We love it. So this quote now has all this information. I could send this to Salesforce if I wanted to. I could send this to HubSpot or Dynamics CRM. How nice is it to be able to just have this automatically to serve up to your sales team, renewal 90 days in advance. All your subscriptions, your contract lines in this case, the customer assets we're supporting, the devices we've issued out there that we may have running through fixed asset management against them, with a nice total due, maybe your sales team can mark it up and get some additional recurring revenue. So that's all I had. Thanks for the extra minute or two that I took, folks. And I think we're finally back to the slides. So David, take it away, sir.
Yeah, certainly. Yes. If you would like to get a more in-depth personalized demo based on your needs, you can easily scan the QR code and put some information on our website and we can schedule that demo, or you can email me. And all my contact information is there, and I'd love to hear from you and be happy to set something up for you. Thank you very much.
Same goes on our side. You can hit 360subscriptionbilling.com. Feel free to hit either one of those QR codes with your smartphone. I'll give you a moment on that one as well. If you'd like a custom demonstration, hit the one on the left. That'll walk you through a little form that asks you all the right questions. We get your pricing and all that stuff right off of that form submission. Probably take you 5-10 minutes. And if you want to see a bunch of product tour videos, maybe this one today wasn't very specific for your particular vertical and how you do recurring revenue and your offerings with your customers, odds are you'll see some of that in the product tour pages. Usually those videos are about 10 to 12 minutes a pop, but just much like you saw today, you won't see me stutter quite as much as I did today, but we'll also show you our Salesforce app and connector on those product tour videos from our website. And with that, I believe we've concluded. We've only got a couple minutes left in here, but I can glad to hang on and take some questions if anybody wants to do so. Oh, and we have one final poll question for you from the 360 subscription billing side. If you wouldn't mind sending that out, please. Team. All right. Well, number one, do we get sent the recordings? Yeah, if you'd like the recording, reach out to either SquareWorks or 360, and we'll be glad to get you that recording on request. We'll pull it down and share it with you. And then we have a lot of technical hardware and components that we sell for which there's needs to track warranties. Can your solution help with that stuff, even if it's not always being billed? Yeah, if you want to use a contract line for the purposes of warranty tracking, even if it's not being billed, you know, or it's a $0, you know, maybe you want to take an advantage of getting, you know, non-zero recurring revenue billing once that warranty expires. You could certainly use our module for that. Okay, any other questions? Almost there. Top of the hour. Okay, and I see the poll coming in. It's kind of cool. I think everybody else can see this poll too, right, Caitlin?
Yes, and it looks like we've got one more question in the chat. How does the billing module compare to suite billing?
How does the billing module compare to suite billing? We've got a kind of little side-by-side feature function comparison that we can walk you through. Generally speaking, suite billing is it's a lot stronger. 360 also sells and implements suite billing too. This is just another tool in our tool case. Suite billing is a lot stronger around usage-based rating, usage aggregation, usage charges. Whereas 360 subscription billing, if you need anything to be fulfilled, any inventory, it definitely can do that, where suite billing cannot. But that's more time than I think we'd had today. Maybe we can follow up to whoever had that question. You know, we'll send you that that comparison chart. In the end, both of them do the same thing. They have different ways of doing it, and they're somewhat specialized, in our opinion, for depending on what kind of vertical you feel your customer, your company fits within. You're welcome.
Do we have any other questions?
Well, if you can't type fast enough, or you can't think the words to type them fast enough, or anything similar to that, you have our information. I want to thank everybody for showing up today. We're proud that this is the first one of these we've done with partnership between our companies. But you know, the common theme I'd say is, you know, automate NetSuite, do it all in NetSuite. Yeah, SquareWorks and 360, we both very much buy into that mindset. We believe most of you do as well, and we look forward to talking to you another day. Cheers.